A crisp autumn wind blew through the small town, rustling leaves across the empty streets. Inside a modest apartment, a young woman sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She stared outside, lost in thought, her mind a mix of memories, regrets, and silent hopes. Life had not been easy for her. Every decision she had made had been shaped by circumstances, and sometimes the choices she had not made haunted her quietly. Years ago, she had met someone. He had been different from anyone she had ever known. A man who carried confidence in every step, who smiled with ease, and whose voice had a way of lingering in her mind long after he was gone. Their meeting had been sudden, almost accidental, at a mutual friends gathering in a city far from her small town. He was ambitious, driven, and wrapped up in a world she could only watch from the edges. Yet for a few months, they had shared something rare, a connection that felt like it could withstand anything. It had not lasted. Life had pulled them apart in ways neither of them could control. He had left, chasing his career, unaware that he had left behind more than just memories. She had discovered she was pregnant shortly after he disappeared, a revelation that changed everything. The first moments of knowing, of feeling the small, life growing inside her had been a mix of fear and awe. She had no one to turn to, no family nearby, and certainly no father for this child to rely on. She remembered the nights when fear kept her awake. She would press her hand to her stomach and whisper to the tiny life inside, promising protection, love, and safety. She would imagine what kind of man the father was. And though she tried to hold anger, most of the time there was only sadness. Sadness that he had never stayed. Sadness that life had demanded she grow stronger faster than anyone should have to. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the floorboards. She glanced around, noticing the small details that made this place a home despite its modesty. A handmade curtain she had sewn herself, photographs of her growing belly and then of her newborn, and the tiny worn-out toys scattered on the floor, reminders of the little girl who had changed her life entirely. Each object carried a memory, a piece of her story that no one else could understand fully. Her thoughts often wandered back to the man she had loved, though she never called it love aloud anymore. There was a tenderness she had tried to bury, under practicality, a memory of laughter shared over coffee, walks in the park, and quiet conversations late at night. She remembered how his eyes had looked when he believed in her, and she wondered if he had ever thought of her once he had left. She tried not to hope, tried to steel herself against disappointment, but sometimes, when the wind hit the window, just right, she allowed herself to imagine a different ending. Raising a child alone had been daunting. She had to learn everything quickly, from changing diapers to late-night feedings, from understanding cries to soothing fears. There were nights when exhaustion threatened to break her, when the weight of responsibility felt unbearable, and yet she carried on. Each morning she would wake, draw a deep breath, and find the strength to start again, motivated by a small, smiling face that depended on her completely. The little girl had grown up with stories of a father she would never meet, stories framed carefully so that curiosity did not become sorrow. The mother would tell tales of a kind man who had to travel far, who loved them both in spirit even if he could not be present. The child accepted these stories with wide-eyed wonder, often asking questions that made her mother's heart ache. Will I see him one day? Or do you think he thinks of me? Each question a quiet reminder of the absence that shaped their lives. Despite everything, there was joy. Every smile, every small achievement, every laugh echoed with a brilliance that made hardships worth enduring. She learned to find beauty in simple things, the way sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, the sound of the child's laughter bouncing off the walls, the comfort of knowing that they had each other. Even on the hardest days, these moments grounded her, reminding her that life, though unpredictable, still offered fragments of happiness. The months turned into years. The woman found work where she could, often juggling 2 jobs to make ends meet. Each paycheck went toward rent, food, and the small luxuries that made life bearable. She became resourceful, inventive, and fiercely protective of her child. Friends were few, but the ones she had were steady, providing small supports in moments of need. Her world had narrowed, but it had also grown richer in unexpected ways, filled with love, resilience, and a quiet pride in what she had built from nothing. In those years, she occasionally wondered about the man who had walked away, not out of longing for romance, but out of curiosity for the life he might have led, and whether he had ever felt the same pangs of regret she had carried silently. She would picture him in his world of boardrooms and big decisions, imagining him oblivious to the little life that continued in another town, completely unaware of the daughter he had never held. And yet, she also imagined him older, softer, maybe realizing that life had changed in ways he could not undo. Some nights, when the city slept and she finally found a quiet moment for herself, she allowed herself to wonder about a reunion. She imagined the day when, against all odds, he might walk through a door, and their lives might collide in ways that could heal or disrupt what she had built. She did not expect it to happen, but the thought comforted her, a small flicker of hope she did not let anyone see. The little girl grew curious, often asking about the world beyond their town. Her questions were innocent, yet they carried the weight of a child trying to understand absence and longing. "Why don't I have a daddy?" she would ask sometimes, her voice trembling with confusion and hope. The mother would pause, choosing words carefully, explaining that sometimes adults make mistakes and that love is not always tied to presence. She wanted her daughter to grow knowing that absence did not mean lack, that love could exist in many forms, and that she was complete with or without the man who had left. As the child's laughter filled the apartment one afternoon, the mother felt a swelling of pride and love. She had done it. She had survived the years alone, raised a daughter with compassion and strength, and carved a life that was hers entirely. There was beauty in that achievement, even if it was quiet, even if it went unnoticed by the world. She realized that life's value was not measured by what had been lost, but by what had been nurtured, protected, and grown despite the odds. Even so, she carried a subtle ache. The world sometimes felt heavy with the weight of missed opportunities, of roads not taken, and of love that had slipped away before it could fully bloom. She did not dwell on it constantly, but it lingered at the edges of her mind, a quiet reminder that some questions had no immediate answers, and some wishes were reserved for the unpredictable future. Through all of this, she remained vigilant for any signs of the man who had shaped her past. Though she never expected him to return, the thought that he might walk into her life one day gave her both anxiety and a strange sense of hope. She imagined what it would be like to see him hold his daughter, to witness the connection that had been missing for so long, and to see whether he could feel the love that had grown silently in their absence. The apartment seemed to breathe with the rhythm of their lives, a quiet testament to perseverance, sacrifice, and unwavering love. The woman knew the road ahead would have more challenges, but she also knew that together they could face them. Her eyes softened as she looked at her daughter playing on the floor, a small smile tugging at her lips. In that moment, the weight of the past felt lighter, carried not alone, but shared in the presence of the child who had changed everything. The wind outside continued to rustle the autumn leaves, and the mother felt a small flicker of destiny. She did not know when or how, but a part of her believed that life had a way of closing circles, of bringing people together in moments they least expected. She hugged her daughter close, whispering a quiet promise that no matter what happened, they would face the future with courage, hope, and love. And in that quiet, ordinary apartment, a story that had begun with absence and uncertainty continued to unfold, shaped by resilience, tempered by love, and awaiting the unexpected turns of fate that might one day change everything. Years passed in the quiet rhythm of the small town. The mother and her daughter had settled into a life that, though modest, was filled with warmth, routine, and small victories. Every morning, the mother would wake before sunrise, brewing tea and preparing a simple breakfast. The child, now slightly older, would shuffle into the kitchen in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and greet her mother with a sleepy smile that made the early mornings worth it. The mother worked hard, holding 2 jobs at times to ensure that rent was paid, food was on the table, and small extras like a new book or a toy could occasionally brighten the child's day. She learned to manage time with a precision that came from necessity, Mornings were for errands and chores, afternoons for her job at a small bakery that had become her sanctuary, and evenings were for homework, storytelling, and cuddling before bed. It was a life that demanded endurance, patience, and an unwavering commitment to love. The daughter had grown into a curious, lively child. With a spark in her eyes that reminded the mother of the man who had left years ago, she was fearless in her questions, always seeking to understand the world around her. "Why do people leave?" she once asked, tugging at her mother's hand as they walked home from school. The mother paused, kneeling to meet her gaze, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes people have to make hard choices, and sometimes they make mistakes," she said gently. "But we learn to live, to grow, and to love even when things are hard." The child nodded, accepting the answer, though a hint of longing lingered in her eyes. At the bakery, the mother had found a rhythm that gave her life meaning beyond survival. The scent of fresh bread, the warmth of the ovens, and the smiles of regular customers provided a sense of community and purpose. She had become a quiet favorite among the locals, known for her kindness, her patience, and the way she remembered small details about everyone who came through the door. There was pride in this, a satisfaction in knowing that despite life's hardships, she had built something steady, something tangible that reflected her resilience. Evenings were their special time. After work, they would return to their small apartment and sit by the window, watching the sun dip behind distant hills. Sometimes they would play board games, other times they would read stories aloud. The mother encouraged imagination, laughter, and curiosity, making sure that her daughter felt seen, loved, and protected. Each night before the child went to bed, the mother would whisper, "You are enough, and you are loved." These words, repeated daily, were her way of filling the gaps left by absence and shaping a sense of security that no one could take away. As the child grew older, she began asking more about the father she had never met. The mother answered carefully, telling her that he had traveled far, that he loved them in his own way even if he could not be there, and that sometimes people make mistakes that change everything. The child listened, her eyes wide and thoughtful, absorbing each word. She learned to imagine her father not as a shadow of loss, but as a figure of possibility, someone who might one day walk into their lives unexpectedly. The mother often found herself reflecting on the years that had passed. There were moments of loneliness, nights when she questioned whether she had made the right decisions, and days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Yet she also felt a quiet pride. She had raised a daughter on her own, maintained her independence, and found joy in small victories. The child's laughter, her growing intelligence, and her kindness were daily reminders that life, though unpredictable, had also been generous in ways she had not anticipated. Meanwhile, in another city, the man who had left years ago was living a life shaped by ambition and success. He had climbed the corporate ladder, making a name for himself in the business world. Boardrooms, business trips, and strategy meetings consumed his days, leaving little room for personal reflection. Yet beneath the surface there was a quiet ache, a sense that something was missing. Occasionally, a fleeting memory of the woman he had left would appear in his mind. Her laughter, the way she had listened to him, and a small persistent thought of a child he had never known. He never acted on these feelings, burying them beneath responsibilities and the momentum of his career. Back in the small town, life had a rhythm that was both comforting and challenging. The mother had learned to navigate her work with grace, juggling schedules, handling unexpected problems, and maintaining a sense of calm in the face of chaos. The bakery, though small, had become a hub of familiarity and warmth. Neighbors would stop by not just for bread and pastries, but for the sense of care and attention that came with every purchase. It was here, among flour-dusted counters and the warmth of ovens, that the mother felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced elsewhere. The daughter thrived in this environment, her personality growing with confidence and curiosity. She loved helping her mother at the bakery, carefully arranging pastries or handing out change with a shy but proud smile. Customers often commented on her polite manners and bright eyes, noting that she carried herself with a quiet dignity beyond her years. The mother watched her with pride, knowing that despite the challenges of their past, the child had become strong, thoughtful, and resilient, a reflection of the love and guidance she had tried to provide. School days brought new experiences. The child excelled academically, showing an aptitude for reading, math, and creative writing. Teachers praised her curiosity and determination, noting her ability to think critically and show empathy toward others. She made friends, explored hobbies, and began to understand the world in ways that extended beyond the confines of their small town. Each achievement, each milestone became a celebration of perseverance, a reminder that despite the hardships of her early life, she had the capacity to grow, learn, and thrive. The mother also took time to nurture her own growth. She read books in quiet moments, learning new skills that could improve her bakery, expand her horizons, or simply enrich her mind. Occasionally, she would take long walks alone, breathing in the crisp air, reflecting on the past and imagining the possibilities of the future. She carried a quiet hope that one day, life might offer an unexpected twist, a chance to reconcile the gaps left by absence, and to witness the presence of someone long forgotten. Neighbors and friends became an extended family of sorts, providing support in small but meaningful ways. A friend might offer a ride to the grocery store, help with repairs around the apartment, or simply sit and listen when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. These connections, though not as deep as blood ties, offered comfort and a reminder that human kindness could bridge gaps that life's challenges sometimes created. The child often asked about the wider world, expressing curiosity about people she had never met, places she had never seen, and experiences beyond the boundaries of their town. The mother encouraged this curiosity, telling stories of adventure, imagination, and resilience. She wanted her daughter to grow with the understanding that life was full of possibilities, and that love in its many forms could exist even in the absence of certain people. Despite their contentment, life was never entirely predictable. Unexpected bills, small accidents, and moments of doubt tested their resilience. Yet, the mother faced each challenge with determination, teaching her daughter the value of problem-solving, patience, and optimism. Together they navigated the ups and downs, building a sense of stability rooted in love, trust, and shared experiences. The years also brought moments of reflection on the father who had left. The mother did not dwell on anger or resentment, but there were times when she allowed herself a quiet sigh, remembering what might have been. She imagined the man as a father, as someone who could have contributed to their lives in ways he never did. These thoughts were tinged with melancholy, but they never overwhelmed her. She had learned to focus on what was present, nurturing the life she could shape rather than lamenting what had been lost. As the child grew into early adolescence, the questions about her father became more frequent and thoughtful. "Do you think he ever thinks of me?" she asked one evening, her voice tinged with hope and curiosity. The mother held her hand, looked into her eyes, and said, "Sometimes people do not realize what they have until later. But what matters is that we know our worth, and that love comes from those who are present with us." The child nodded, absorbing the wisdom, yet still dreaming of the possibility of meeting him someday. The mother's dedication extended beyond practical care. She nurtured emotional resilience, teaching her daughter to express feelings, recognize value in small joys, and appreciate the efforts of others. They celebrated birthdays with simple but meaningful rituals, marking the passage of time with laughter, cake, and handmade gifts. Holidays were occasions for connection, reflection, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. The bakery remained a constant, a symbol of stability in their evolving lives. Customers became familiar faces, offering not just business but stories, smiles, and a sense of community. The mother's reputation for kindness, patience, and skill grew, and she took pride in creating a space where people felt welcome, cared for, and appreciated. The child, watching her mother work, absorbed lessons in diligence, integrity, and the quiet power of consistency. Through these years, the mother's hope for an unexpected reunion with the father never disappeared entirely. She carried it quietly, tucked away beneath the demands of daily life. Occasionally, she imagined what it would be like to see him walk into their lives, to witness the connection with his daughter, and to see whether he could recognize the love and resilience that had grown in his absence. These thoughts were bittersweet, filled with both longing and a recognition of life's unpredictable nature. Evenings remained a time of intimacy and reflection. They would sit by the window, the child talking animatedly about her day, her dreams, and her curiosities. The mother listened, responding with warmth, guidance, and encouragement. The apartment, though modest, felt full of life, laughter, and learning. Each day closed with a sense of accomplishment, however small, and a quiet certainty that together they could face whatever the future held. Life moved forward, steady and deliberate, shaping both mother and daughter into people defined by resilience, hope, and love. The past, though present in memory, did not dictate their present. Instead, it provided lessons, wisdom, and a quiet reminder of the strength required to navigate life's challenges. The mother often smiled at her daughter's innocence, intelligence, and kindness, knowing that despite the absence of one parent, she had succeeded in providing a foundation of love, security, and growth. The child thrived, curious about the world, compassionate toward others, and confident in her ability to face challenges. Together, they had built a life that was rich in meaning, if not in wealth and full of possibilities, if not guarantees, and yet, in quiet moments there remained the faint, unspoken hope that life had a way of circling back, that one day, the man who had left might unknowingly walk into their lives. This hope was neither desperate nor naive. It was a quiet acknowledgement that sometimes the unexpected had a way of finding those who least expected it. As another autumn evening settled over the town, the mother held her daughter close, feeling the warmth of shared love and resilience. The years had tested them, shaped them, and strengthened their bond. And though the past held its shadows, the present was filled with light, laughter, and the promise that life, in all its unpredictability, could still surprise them in ways they had never imagined. The years had passed with a quiet rhythm, each day much like the last in the small town. The mother and her daughter continued to thrive in their modest lives, their bond stronger than ever. The bakery had become a familiar part of their lives, and the daughter had grown into a confident, lively young girl. Her laughter echoed through the small apartment and the streets beyond, a testament to resilience and love. One day, the mother was arranging fresh pastries on the counter when a client mentioned that a conference would be taking place in the nearby city, drawing in many visitors from out of town. Among the people traveling for business was the man who had left years ago, the father. He had become a successful executive, one whose decisions affected many, and he traveled constantly. Life in the corporate world had given him everything he had wanted, yet there was a quiet restlessness, a feeling of something missing that he could not name. He had arrived in the town for a meeting that would last only a few hours. His schedule was packed, leaving little room for exploring the surroundings. Yet, as he waited outside the hotel, he overheard someone mentioning a small bakery in the town center. On impulse, he decided to visit. He wanted a quiet place to gather his thoughts, maybe grab a coffee or something to eat before heading back to the conference. The decision seemed casual, but fate had a way of weaving unexpected moments. As he entered the bakery, he was greeted by the warm aroma of fresh bread and pastries, the kind of comforting scent that felt almost familiar. The atmosphere was bright, simple, and inviting, with sunlight streaming through the windows and illuminating the small space. Regular customers were chatting quietly over cups of coffee, and the mother, busy behind the counter, greeted him with a polite nod and a soft smile. The father did not expect to feel a sudden rush of recognition. There was nothing extraordinary in the surroundings, nothing remarkable about the bakery itself, and yet something in the way the space felt, the gentle hum of conversation, the warmth in the air, stirred memories he had buried for years. He ordered a coffee, trying to focus on mundane details, but his attention kept drifting. Something about the life in this place seemed strangely familiar. The daughter was helping her mother, placing pastries on the counter and arranging small displays, when she looked up. Her eyes caught a man who had just stepped inside, and she paused. There was something about him that stirred a curiosity she could not explain. His height, the way he carried himself, and an air of familiarity, though she had never met him, made her hesitate in her movements. She stared quietly, trying to process the fleeting impression he made. The mother noticed the glance and offered a small, polite smile, nodding toward the counter. The father returned the gesture, acknowledging her without thinking much about it. But then, as he sipped his coffee and glanced around the room, his eyes landed on the little girl. Time seemed to stop in that moment. He froze, heart beating faster, as a wave of recognition swept over him. There was a striking resemblance between the girl and someone he had loved long ago. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her cheeks, the way she moved with such confidence, it was all too familiar. The daughter, sensing the intensity of his gaze, looked up again. Her wide eyes met his, and in that instant, something inside her clicked. A feeling she could not name told her that there was a connection. something she had never experienced before. She stepped closer to her mother, tugging gently at her hand, her curiosity piqued. The mother, unaware of the recognition, continued working, arranging pastries and greeting customers, her focus elsewhere. The father felt a swirl of emotions he had long ignored: surprise, disbelief, longing, and a quiet hope. He approached the counter cautiously, trying to gauge the situation without revealing too much. The mother greeted him politely, unaware that this man had once been a pivotal part of her life. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice calm and friendly. He nodded, his eyes still searching for confirmation in the little girl's face. "Yes, I'm just here for a coffee," he replied, his tone careful as if testing the waters. As he stood near the counter, the girl's curiosity grew. She had never felt this kind of pull toward a stranger before. Something about him seemed familiar, though she could not understand why. She glanced at her mother, then back at the man, trying to reconcile the strange feelings swirling in her mind. There was a sense of recognition, a quiet intuition that defied explanation. The father's thoughts raced. He remembered the woman he had left years ago, the life he had abandoned without knowing the consequences. And now, standing in this small bakery, he realized that life had given him something he never imagined: a daughter, a living reminder of the love and connection he had left behind. The realization hit him like a sudden storm, leaving him momentarily breathless. The mother continued her work, arranging pastries and serving customers, unaware of the internal storm brewing around her. She had no idea that the man from her past was standing just a few feet away, observing her daughter with an intensity that belied casual interest. There was a tension in the air, subtle yet undeniable, a quiet charge that hinted at the gravity of the moment. The little girl, feeling the intensity of the stranger's gaze, took a step closer to the counter. She tilted her head, her eyes wide with curiosity, and asked, "Mom, do you know him?" Her voice was innocent, but the question carried a weight that made the mother pause. She looked toward the man, her mind racing to place the face, but nothing stirred an immediate memory. She shook her head slightly, puzzled, and replied, "No, sweetie, I don't think so." "Why?" The daughter's gaze returned to the man, studying him closely. There was a connection she could not explain, an invisible thread that seemed to pull her attention toward him. She felt a strange warmth, a sense of familiarity that both comforted and confused her. Her small hand gripped her mother's gently, seeking reassurance as she tried to make sense of the unusual feelings inside her. The father, now closer to the counter, felt the full weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had spent years building a life in which he never thought about the daughter he had unknowingly fathered. Yet here she was standing in front of him, alive, whole, and unmistakably his. The emotional impact was overwhelming: shock, wonder, and an aching guilt he had buried deep inside him. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but words failed him. The moment seemed to stretch, the quiet hum of the bakery fading into the background as his eyes never left the child's face. He noticed her small, inquisitive features, her wide, expressive eyes, and the same curve of her smile that he remembered in her mother. Every detail confirmed what he had feared and hoped for at the same time. The daughter, sensing the intensity of the moment, stepped slightly forward. Her voice trembled as she asked the question that had been forming in her mind, though she barely understood why it mattered. "Daddy?" The word hung in the air, fragile yet powerful, carrying the weight of recognition, hope, and innocence. The mother froze. Her hands paused mid-motion, her eyes widening in shock. She looked at the man, then at her daughter, then back again, trying to process the scene unfolding before her. The quiet hum of the bakery seemed to fade as the enormity of the moment settled over them all. She could see the disbelief mirrored in the father's eyes, the hesitation, the raw emotion, and the sudden awareness that life had circled back in ways no one could have predicted. The father felt his chest tighten, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He bent slightly toward the girl, unsure how to respond, unsure if he even deserved the title she had just given him. He searched her face, memorizing the features, feeling an inexplicable mix of guilt, awe, and longing. I think I'm your father," he said carefully, his voice trembling with sincerity. The daughter's eyes widened even more, her small hands clutching her mother's. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. Everything she had imagined about her father, everything she had wondered about his existence, was suddenly real. The presence of this stranger-turned-father filled her with a mix of joy, confusion, and cautious hope. The mother, still in shock, struggled to find her voice. Memories of the past, years of separation, and the challenges of raising her daughter alone all collided in a whirlwind of emotion. She realized that life had presented an opportunity she had never anticipated, a chance for her daughter to know the father who had once walked away. Her heart ached with the weight of the years lost, yet she also felt a glimmer of hope, a possibility of reconciliation and understanding. The bakery seemed to hold its breath. Customers, sensing the unusual tension, whispered quietly among themselves, unsure of what was unfolding. The father knelt slightly to meet his daughter at eye level, trying to convey love, sincerity, and patience in a moment that defied preparation. The daughter, cautiously reaching out, felt a strange, comforting warmth in his presence, as if a missing piece of her life had finally been found. The mother finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. You are her father?" she asked, seeking confirmation, needing to hear it aloud. The man nodded, his eyes never leaving their daughter's. "Yes," he said simply. "I made mistakes, I left, but I'm here now." The daughter's small face broke into a tentative smile, her heart racing with excitement and uncertainty. She reached out, her hand brushing against his, feeling the connection she had longed for without fully understanding. The father felt an unexpected surge of emotion, realizing that this moment, years in the making, was more profound than anything he could have imagined. Time seemed to slow. The mother, the daughter, and the father stood together in the quiet bakery, the past and present colliding in a single unforgettable instant. The weight of absence, the longing of years, and the promise of new beginnings all hung in the air. Words felt inadequate, yet the presence of love, recognition, and connection spoke volumes. It was a moment that would be remembered forever, a moment when life, in its unpredictable and mysterious ways, had brought together people who had been separated by years, distance, and choices. The father's eyes filled with tears. The daughter's small hands gripped his, and the mother, standing beside them, felt the warmth of hope and possibility for the first time in years. The bakery, filled with the scent of fresh bread and the soft chatter of patrons, had become the backdrop for a reunion that was years overdue. In that ordinary space, something extraordinary had occurred. A reunion of hearts, the bridging of absence and the beginning of a journey that would redefine their lives forever. After the initial shock of the reunion, the days that followed were filled with an unusual mix of excitement, uncertainty, and quiet reflection. The mother tried to carry on with her daily routines, but everything felt different. The bakery, once a familiar and comfortable space, now seemed alive with possibility and change. She had seen her daughter's eyes light up in ways that made her heart ache with a combination of joy and caution. There was hope now, but also fear of disruption, of disappointment, and of navigating uncharted emotional territory. The father had stayed in the town longer than planned, claiming work obligations, but in reality, he wanted to understand, to observe, and to begin bridging the gap he had created years ago. He visited the bakery often, sometimes just to sit quietly at a corner table, watching his daughter move about, helping her mother, and greeting customers. Each glance, each smile, each small gesture from the child struck him with a profound sense of wonder and guilt. He had missed years of her life, and now every second felt both precious and painfully overdue. The daughter, on the other hand, approached this new reality with curiosity, caution, and excitement all at once. She had longed for a father in some abstract way, and now one stood before her. Some days she was bold, asking questions, seeking attention, or sharing small achievements with him. Other days she withdrew slightly, uncertain whether this new presence was permanent or fleeting. The mother supported her through these fluctuations, encouraging her to express feelings and assuring her that it was okay to feel conflicted. They spent the first few mornings cautiously testing boundaries. The father would ask gentle questions. "What did you have for breakfast?" Or "How was school today?" The daughter would respond carefully, measuring her words, sometimes with a shy smile, other times with a laugh that seemed to make him ache with the realization of all he had missed. The mother watched silently, seeing the subtle signs of connection and understanding beginning to form between them. Evenings became particularly special. The mother would prepare dinner as usual, but now the father joined, sitting at the table with the child, helping with homework, or telling stories of his own childhood. These moments were awkward at first, Years of absence created invisible walls that could not be removed overnight. Yet with patience and consistency, those walls began to soften. The daughter slowly learned that he was trustworthy, that he was genuinely interested in her life, and that he wanted to be part of her world without overwhelming her. There were challenges. The father sometimes struggled to find his place, unsure how to interact without overstepping or causing discomfort. The daughter, accustomed to independence and her mother's guidance, occasionally tested him, asking difficult questions or retreating when emotions became intense. The mother mediated with care, offering gentle reassurance and reminding both that relationships take time to grow, that trust is built slowly, and that forgiveness is a process, not an instant solution. The father also had to confront his own emotions. Guilt weighed heavily on him, the years of absence, the milestones missed, and the silent suffering he had caused without knowing. He wrestled with regret quietly, often retreating to small moments of reflection alone in the bakery or on quiet walks through the town. He wondered if it was possible to make up for lost time, to become the parent he had failed to be, and to earn the trust of both mother and child. The path forward was uncertain, but he was determined to try. The mother, too, navigated her complex feelings. She had spent years building a life independent of the man who had left, and now his presence was both a gift and a test. She felt protective over her daughter, wary of disruption, yet she could see the positive impact of his involvement. Slowly, she allowed herself to accept small moments of joy. Watching her daughter giggle with her father, seeing the warmth in his eyes when he praised her, and noticing the subtle ways he tried to make amends through thoughtfulness and consistency. They began to share routines together. Weekends became a time for small adventures, trips to the local park, walks by the river, and visits to the library. The father made an effort to participate in activities that mattered to his daughter, listening to her stories, encouraging her interests, and celebrating small achievements. These shared experiences built the foundation of a relationship based on trust, mutual respect, and genuine affection. At the bakery, regular customers noticed the subtle changes. The father's presence brought new energy into the space. He would help with small tasks, carry boxes, or offer assistance to customers in ways that seemed natural and unforced. The mother observed these moments with a mixture of pride and cautious optimism. It was clear that he wanted to be part of their lives, and the child's responsiveness suggested that he could succeed if he remained patient and consistent. Conversations between mother and father grew longer and more meaningful over time. They spoke quietly about the past, about decisions made, and about the future. There were difficult discussions, acknowledging hurt, expressing regrets, and addressing fears, but also moments of understanding, empathy, and tentative forgiveness. The father expressed remorse for leaving, explaining the pressures and confusion that had led to his choices. The mother listened, acknowledging his sincerity while also setting boundaries to protect herself and their daughter. The daughter began to notice the changes in her parents' interactions. She saw her father trying to be considerate, observed the mother's careful encouragement, and started to internalize the reality that this was not a fleeting moment. Slowly, she allowed herself to hope. She engaged in more conversations, asked more questions about his life, and shared her own experiences with him. She began to understand that relationships are built on effort, patience, and shared experiences, not just presence alone. Small victories marked their progress. The daughter let him help with school projects, laugh with her over shared jokes, and even confide in him about small worries. He learned her routines, her likes and dislikes, and the subtle cues that signaled comfort or discomfort. The mother observed these interactions carefully, guiding when necessary, but mostly allowing them to develop their own rhythm. Over time, the father became a consistent, reliable presence, one the daughter could trust and turn to without fear. There were also moments of tension, natural in any family adjusting to new dynamics. Misunderstandings arose, emotions flared, and disagreements happened. Yet these moments were not destructive. They became opportunities to teach resilience, communication, and compromise. The mother facilitated these lessons, ensuring that the daughter understood that conflict is part of relationships, and that empathy and listening are crucial to navigating challenges. As weeks turned into months, the bond between father and daughter strengthened. They shared inside jokes, small rituals like bedtime stories, and celebrations of milestones together. The father learned the joy of witnessing firsts he had missed, school performances, small achievements, and moments of personal growth. Each of these experiences deepened his appreciation for the child he had not known, while also reinforcing his commitment to making up for lost time. The mother, observing the transformation, allowed herself to relax slightly. She saw the positive impact on her daughter, noticed the father's genuine efforts, and began to envision a future in which all three of them could coexist harmoniously. She remained cautious, understanding that trust is earned slowly, but she also embraced the moments of joy and connection that now punctuated their days. They also began planning small outings together outside the town. Visits to nearby museums, the riverside, and occasional trips to the city introduced new experiences for the daughter. The father took special care to make these trips memorable, often capturing small photographs and keeping mementos that would serve as reminders of the growing bond. The daughter, in turn, learned to appreciate the effort and presence, gradually becoming more open, affectionate, and trusting. Through these experiences, the father began to understand the full impact of absence. He realized that love alone is not enough. It requires time, attention, and commitment. The mother's resilience became a model for him, and he grew to respect the life she had built in his absence. The daughter's happiness and adaptability reinforced the idea that connection is nurtured through consistent care and shared experiences. As the seasons changed, the small family developed a rhythm. Mornings, afternoons, and evenings were filled with shared responsibilities, laughter, learning, and growth. The father's presence no longer felt awkward. It became natural. The daughter's smile when she saw him was no longer tentative. It was genuine and full of warmth. The mother, though still vigilant, allowed herself to feel hope that the past did not define their future. They celebrated holidays together, creating new traditions that honored the past while embracing the present. Birthdays became occasions for shared joy, surprises, and heartfelt expressions of love. The father learned the art of thoughtful gestures, small acts of kindness, and the importance of listening attentively. Each of these actions contributed to building trust, strengthening bonds, and creating a sense of family that had been missing for years. In quiet moments, the three of them would sit together by the window, watching sunsets, sharing stories, and reflecting on the day. The bakery, once just a place of work, had become a backdrop for connection, growth, and reconciliation. It symbolized stability, warmth, and the small victories that life had granted them despite the years of separation. Through persistence, patience, and shared experiences, the father began to feel a sense of belonging he had never known. The daughter flourished with the knowledge that she was loved by both parents, and the mother discovered that allowing someone into their lives could bring unexpected joy, even after years of independence. Together, they learned that family is built not just on blood, but on commitment, care, and the willingness to embrace second chances. As months continued to pass, they grew into a quiet but strong unit. The father's mistakes were not forgotten, but they no longer defined the present. The daughter's laughter, curiosity, and affection became daily reminders of what had been lost and what could now be nurtured. And the mother, seeing the transformation in both her child and the man who had once walked away, allowed herself to feel a fragile but growing sense of hope that life's unpredictability could indeed bring healing, connection, and love. The days settled into a steady rhythm, one shaped by the slow but sure weaving together of lives that had once been separated. The father was no longer a distant figure. He was part of their home, their routines, and their hearts. The bakery continued to hum with the quiet energy of daily life, but now it also held the warmth of shared laughter, small conversations, and the kind of quiet companionship that comes from trust rebuilt over time. The daughter had grown more confident in expressing herself around her father. She would ask for his help in solving small problems, whether it was choosing a new recipe for the bakery's special treat or arranging the chairs in the small dining area. He responded with patience, guiding her gently, praising her ideas and listening intently to her opinions. The mother watched these moments closely, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride, relief, and quiet wonder. She could see that their bond was not fragile. It was growing stronger each day. Weekends became adventures in subtle ways. They took walks in the park, sometimes bringing a small picnic with sandwiches and fresh bread from the bakery. The father would push the daughter on the swings, laughing as she squealed with delight, feeling a joy he had missed for years. She in turn began to notice the little ways he tried to understand her world, learning her favorite games, asking about her friends, and remembering details that mattered. Every small effort was a brick in the bridge they were building between past absence and present connection. The mother had gradually relaxed, letting go of her initial wariness. She observed how carefully the father handled moments of difficulty, how he navigated her daughter's moods, and how he respected the boundaries she had set for her small family. Slowly, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they could all belong to each other without tension or doubt. She even began to involve him in decisions about the bakery, valuing his perspective and appreciating the partnership they had started to form. School days brought new opportunities for bonding. The father attended school events for the first time, watching his daughter perform in small plays and participate in classroom activities. He cheered loudly from the audience, sometimes drawing curious glances from other parents but never caring about appearances. His pride and excitement were genuine, unfiltered, and undeniable. The daughter felt a swell of happiness each time she saw him in the crowd, realizing that his presence was no longer tentative. It was constant, dependable, and full of love.